Good evening, everyone. Hell's Unicorn here once again. And so it seems that we have healthcare reform now. That has kind of a ring to it, doesn't it? Healthcare reform. You know, I'm not really sure I even know what that means, honestly, to tell you the truth. What does healthcare reform mean, anyway? I mean, what is it being reformed into? What's it being turned into? And is that thing that it's being turned into actually better than what we had previously? Now, obviously, to know such things, we need to inquire further. We need to read what's actually being proposed. And for most of us who've been following this for as long as we have, we've done a considerable amount of reading. We might not have read the entire thing, but we've gotten secondary sources with confirmed quotes touching upon all the salient points. And as a result, this supposed healthcare reform has gone through a number of evolutions. And along with it, it seems that our entire government and our beloved Constitution has gone through some rather radical evolutions in the process. So the question then becomes, what do we do? Well, in order to answer this question, I'm going to have to treat everybody as separate groups, because that's what this issue has basically made us. Not that we weren't already that before, but this has really kind of brought that out. It's an us and them thing now, basically, and I've gotten into this myself. I've made a couple of comments since this thing passed, basically asserting that those of us that support this kind of stuff should form our own country, and those of us who don't should form our own country, and that the two respective groups should essentially keep out of each other's way, because that's the only way you're ever going to restore civility to politics. Got to separate the freedom lovers from the slavery lovers. Simple as that. But the first thing that I'm going to say to the first group of people, I'm going to say to my adversaries, in this case the political left. And I count among those people ones that I used to consider occasional allies, in this case Dennis Kucinich and a few others. These are people who I had some measure of hope for. People that I thought, you know, they have the wrong principles, but at least they're sticking by them. But knowing Dennis Kucinich, sticking to principle isn't really something that's in his nature. I mean, we all well remember that for a long time he was a bit of an aberration in the progressive movement, and that he stuck to the traditionalist Roman Catholic viewpoint of being pro-life. But naturally, when it came time for presidential politics to get into the equation, that went right out the window. I'll tell you something right now, ladies and gentlemen. If a person cannot stick to his guns regarding the most basic of issues, in this case the right to life, and thus the resulting right of liberty and pursuit of happiness, how can you really count on them for anything else? I had my suspicions that Kucinich was going to eventually go along with this, knowing full well that this was going to have a large degree of corporate cronyism and unsavory government cronyism in it, and he's been somewhat of a lone voice of conscience within the Democratic Party of late. But, you know, a conscience is an expensive thing when you're on the wrong side, and basically he is. And I'm not just talking about the political party he's in, but also, I'm sad to say, the religion that he identifies himself with. I've overlooked that for a long time with a lot of people, but I can't really overlook that anymore. And that's the reason why I'm now going to get into the next topic. And this will be the last thing that I say to my adversaries, and also to anybody else who would otherwise be my allies, but who don't see eye to eye with me on the religion thing. I provided a link in the description to a story on the Huffington Post. It's dated back about a month and a half. And I'm putting this up for a couple reasons. The primary reason is because I've seen a lot of really, really poorly informed posts being put up on the various videos on YouTube right now depicting the recent vote, saying, you know, Clinton, you know, surplus, budget surplus, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't account for the fact that Clinton's last year before leaving did not really see the best of times, either economically or in terms of general fiscal discipline, although it was still a step up from what we got later. Then we get the Bush's return to power, in this case Bush Jr., and we get deficit, deficit, deficit. Now, I'm not an apologist for Bush. I think he's bad news, and I don't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Haven't really had any respect for him since he was first elected, but, you know, you guys are free to lie to yourselves and say that I think otherwise if it suits whatever delusion you're laboring under. But then after saying, you know, Bush deficit, 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 we get to Obama and we say, CBO prediction, woo, hundreds, billion, some odd change after that in deficit cuts. Now, I want you to take a look at this little link that I have in the description to the Huffington Post, because it's a news organization that I assume that you respect, considering they espouse the same viewpoints that you do in probably a more extreme form. And I want you to look at the title, and the title is Obama's $3.8 trillion budget includes record deficit. Now, is it too much to ask that you include that stuff in your posts also, just to give your posts a little bit of accuracy and so that they're not misleading to people? Nah. Guess that's a little too much to ask. You know, there basically is no logic in politics, so how can I expect it from any of you guys? So feel free to go to the link, read this article, and get a little bit more perspective on what's going on, and spare me the comments telling me that I'm being disingenuous and I'm just being a no-good Republican or all that other stuff, because quite frankly, I don't really want to fucking hear it.